From the Community of Christ Temple in Independence, Missouri, welcome back to CIMM Sessions, little bite-sized servings of theology, culture, and Community of Christ identity, mission, message, beliefs, and practices. We are finishing our four-part series on the 2024 reunion materials, Heal the Earth, Heal the World, Mission Imperative. And with us again is Rick Bunch, the writer of these materials. Today, we're going to cover two chapters, so we're going to move fairly quickly. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chats, and at the end, we'll have a time to answer some questions. I am sending on the chats right now the link to the materials if you'd like to have them with you as we go through this session together. And from Colorado, Rick Bunch is with us. Thank you for joining us again, Rick.
Well, hello again. It's good to be with you. Our task tonight, as David has indicated, is to try to get through two lessons. And so it'll be a whirlwind experience. So hang on. The lesson that to begin with is entitled Finding Our Place. And during this time, we'll explore relationships and effects of poverty, racism, and climate. Poverty commonly is defined as the state of being poor, marked by deficiencies, inadequacies, and scarcity. However, it is a multifaceted justice issue that encompasses more than food insecurities or housing shortages. Racial injustice and the impacts of climate change also contribute to the complexities of poverty, creating a cycle that can persist across generations, known as generational poverty. Breaking this cycle is challenging without external intervention. The holistic mission of Community of Christ includes the challenge to abolish poverty and end suffering. This lesson delves into how racism and climate play roles in perpetuating the cycle of poverty. It urges disciplines and disciples to explore ways to break this cycle, aligning with stewardship principles that demand addressing and mitigating the underlying forces contributing to these circumstances as a matter of justice. As we have done in the past, we will begin with sharing a scripture, and this one comes from section 163 of the Doctrine and Covenants, paragraph 4a. God, the eternal creator, weeps for the poor, displaced, mistreated, and diseased of the world because of their unnecessary suffering. Such conditions are not God's will. Open your ears to hear the pleading of mothers and fathers in all nations who desperately seek a future of hope for their children. Do not turn away from them, for in their welfare resides your welfare. Let the educational and community development endeavors of the church equip people of all ages to carry the ethics of Christ's peace into all arenas of life. Prepare new generations of disciples to bring fresh vision to bear on the perplexing problems of poverty, disease, war, and environmental deterioration. Their contributions will be multiplied if their hearts are focused on God's will for creation. Poverty often sets in motion a destructive cycle characterized by unmet need because of restricted access to resources, perpetuating further need, and so forth. Those experiencing poverty frequently face various forms of discrimination, contributing to the entrapment of multiple generations in the cycle of poverty. It is crucial to recognize that poverty is a multifaceted issue that extends beyond hunger and insufficient physical resources. Poverty often is linked to a range of challenges, including poor health, limited educational opportunities, disease, malnutrition, inadequate housing, restricted access to clean water, and a lack of livelihood or job opportunities. Addressing poverty requires acknowledging and addressing these interconnected aspects to break the cycle effectively. Individuals with resources often make assumptions, sometimes inaccurate ones, about those in impoverished circumstances. These assumptions can result in discrimination or unfair and prejudiced treatment based solely on specific categories such as poverty, gender, or race. Various forms of human injustices, such as gender bias, racism, caste systems, or tribal affiliation, can significantly hinder individuals in breaking free from poverty. Recognizing and addressing these injustices is crucial to fostering genuine equality and breaking the cycle of poverty. World Conference Resolution 1326, adopted in April 2023, defines racism as a system of inequality based on racial prejudice and the belief that one race is innately superior to all other races. When individuals in poverty experience racism, it can have devastating, even life-threatening impacts. For example, if people in poverty face racism in seeking housing or employment, the discrimination limits their ability to break the cycle of poverty. Climate change can also perpetuate the cycle of poverty. According to the United Nations World Food Program, the poor are hungry, and their hunger traps them in poverty. Many weather-related disasters pose a significantly higher risk to vulnerable populations. Droughts, floods, and severe storms disproportionately impact poverty-stricken communities because of their lack of resources to prepare and respond adequately. The World Bank estimates that climate change has the potential to push more than 100 million people into poverty over the next 10 years. In 1972, the World Conference adopted Doctrine and Covenants, Section 150, Paragraph 7, includes this warning to the church. These are portentous times. The lives of many are being sacrificed unnecessarily to the gods of war, greed, and avarice. The land is being desecrated by the thoughtless waste of vital resources. You must obey my commandments and be in the forefront of those who would mediate this needless destruction while there is yet day. These words challenge us to protect all people and earth. The passage encourages us to seek nonviolent resolutions to human differences and to care for our world. As Mahatma Gandhi said, poverty is the worst form of violence. Considering the link between poverty and climate change, the destruction of Earth and its resources contributes to human suffering. Eliminating violence between people and toward Earth benefits everyone. Humanitarian programs serve as the initial intervention to disrupt the cycle of poverty. These initiatives offer essential logistical and material resources to fulfill the fundamental living requirements of communities, especially in the aftermath of natural disasters or significant tragedies. While crucial in sustaining life during emergencies, addressing immediate needs alone does not tackle the underlying systemic issues that contribute to the persistence of poverty. It is essential to recognize that our political and environmental choices wield significant influence, serving as powerful engines of change with long-term consequences that become a part of our societal DNA. The mission initiative of Abolish Poverty and End Suffering calls us to confront immediate and underlying causes of poverty. For instance, research underscores the significance of education as a crucial factor in enabling individuals to break free from the cycle of poverty. However, the endeavor to provide quality education faces numerous obstacles, including insufficient funding and teachers, as well as issues related to racial and gender discrimination and cultural biases. Despite these challenges, addressing the call to enhance educational opportunities is worthwhile, as education frequently opens doors to better employment, subsequently improving access to food and housing. Education and learning also play crucial roles in expanding one's understanding of diverse circumstances and cultures. They have the potential to dismantle barriers that otherwise might keep people divided. As one author noted, education is one of the most powerful tools against racism. It is not only enables us to educate against the prejudices that fuel it, but also equips future generations with the intellectual tools needed to dismantle racial barriers and break the cycles of chronic poverty affecting a disproportionate number of Afro descendants. A similar observation applies to the connection between education and addressing climate change. Learning enables us to develop a fact-based understanding of ongoing events, paving the way for the creation of credible and effective responses. Education and learning, which lead to knowledge, are transformative. Bridging the gap between what we know and how we respond can bring significant changes. Despair can turn to hope. Violence can give way to nonviolence. Scarcity can transform into abundance, and insecurity can shift to security. Embracing and looking at diversity becomes a solution to violence rather than its origin. Climate change affects all people, but its impact is particularly severe for the world's most vulnerable populations, which are more likely to reside in areas experiencing significant consequences. These regions often lack the resources to safeguard against and to recover from natural disasters. Additionally, most and many vulnerable individuals lack the voice and power to help enact policies that would protect their interests. Global research on environmental justice has revealed that individuals lacking economic stability often live disproportionately in environmentally fragile regions. These areas may be subjected to toxic industries and waste dumps, exposing residents to dangerous and unhealthy environments. Moreover, populations in these regions frequently encounter challenges in accessing clean food, water, and air. The combination of limited economic resources and political influence leaves these communities more vulnerable to various environmental health hazards. It also should be noted that one of the problems with the lack of money and resources causes people, and particularly in island countries, to strip the land of their forests, therefore extending the problems with climate justice. Climate justice encompasses climate-related manifestations of racism and inequality, advocating for structural changes to address these issues. It acknowledges that those least accountable for climate change often bear the greatest vulnerability to the impacts. These individuals also are the ones most likely to lack resources to shield themselves from extreme weather events, rising sea levels, famine, and other environmental disasters. Additionally, They are least likely to have contributed to the environmental degradation in the first place and have benefited the least from the progress of industrial society enjoyed by the world's wealthy. Climate justice calls on individuals to acknowledge climate change as a moral, political, and economic challenge that necessitates a profound restructuring of our society and economy. It goes beyond merely manipulating incentives and advancing technologies. At the local level, the journey often starts by understanding the causes of climate change and exploring strategies for mitigation. Moreover, it involves recognizing its interconnectedness with issues such as racism and the perpetuation of poverty. Throughout history, people in power gradually and persistently have transformed life on Earth and its support systems. Human progress increasingly has relied on continuous economic growth. Unfortunately, at times, this pursuit of economic growth, coupled with the aim of reducing poverty, has resulted in depletion of the world's natural capital, harm to ecosystems, and threats to human health. Recent decades have witnessed a significant acceleration in resource degradation, climate change, pollution, and extinctions. In 75% of all countries, the adverse impacts of environmental degradation not only are keeping pace with economic growth, but often surpassing it in speed. The World Health Organization reports that nearly 9 million people die annually due to complications from air, land, and water pollution, a dire circumstance of such degradation. Many argue that we urgently need radical changes in how we interact with nature, address poverty, and define prosperity. Seeking to rally the world toward common good, leaders of the UN adopted the UN General Assembly 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Around the same time, world leaders signed the 2015 Paris Climate Change Agreement. Both initiatives recognize the collective responsibility of all countries to redirect prevailing trends toward positive outcomes. Achieving sustainable and inclusive development requires robust definition, implementation, and monitoring. It demands setting aside political differences and activating support for these crucial initiatives. Community of Christ has an opportunity to build on the expertise and efforts of others in these critical areas. Embodying our enduring principles, such as upholding the worth of all persons and the sacredness of creation, and fulfilling our mission cannot be accomplished in isolation. Collaboration and partnership with others who share our goals and are essential to making a meaningful impact. Throughout history, as European and subsequently USA interests expanded globally through conquest and exploitation, a belief in the divine justification of enslaving and subjugating individuals based on their ethnicity emerged. This mindset, too often held by those privileged with power, has had a lasting impact, giving rise to attitudes of superiority that relegate entire populations to marginalized positions with subpar living conditions. The consequence is evident in disparities, including limited access to essential resources such as healthcare, education, employment, clean water, and food. Regrettably, remnants of these historical attitudes persist in contemporary times. Discriminatory practices like redlining, which restricts certain areas and cities from being accessible for purchase by individuals of specific ethnicities, are still present. It happens that in my travels with the church, I've also observed some of the communities in southern Louisiana where there is rows of houses along marginally paved streets where there is no indoor plumbing. And these rows of houses are below sea level, and the residents are forced to walk out to the street to get their water from hydrants that are located along the streets. In the historical context of Native Americans, the concept of manifest destiny was employed to justify the belief that it was God's will for European immigrants to move westward and claim vast lands before them. Tragically, this rationale resulted in the mistreatment of native populations. They endured violence, imprisonment, and forced removal from their ancestral lands to designated areas known as reservations, often orchestrated by the federal government. Promised resources such as food, healthcare, and housing seldom were fulfilled. Education for Native American children involved sending them to government boarding schools, frequently run by religious groups. In these institutions, students were compelled to adopt white culture through indoctrination, isolation, and harsh physical punishments. Some cases even resulted in fatalities. Similar practices were enforced on Australia's Indigenous people and Canada's First Peoples. In the USA, Native Americans frequently were dehumanized. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, initially under the Department of Defense and later the Department of the Interior, held responsibilities not only for Native American affairs, but for bison, wolves, and environmental management. Despite discriminatory policies and some tribal nations not only survived, but thrived, developing written languages, educational systems, and secure tribal governance. It is noteworthy that in the United States, Australia, and Canada now acknowledge the benefits of involving Native peoples in environmental management. This recognition reflects an understanding of their wisdom in caring for the natural world. In this context, its significance signifies an acknowledgement of the sacredness of creation. This provides a glimpse into the historical injustices and systemic discrimination experienced by marginalized communities, especially Native Americans, due to European and USA expansion. It only scratches the surface. It is a complex history marked by exploitation, violence, and institutionalized prejudice. Consider delving deeper into understanding the profound impacts of these historical attitudes and the ongoing challenges faced by vulnerable populations. In 2015, the United Nations adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, if you will, with the intent of meeting them by 2030. These goals include no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, partnership for the goals. The UN 17 SDGs serve as a universal call to action, aiming to address global challenges and foster a more sustainable and equitable world by 2030. These goals align well with Community of Christ's enduring principles which include upholding the worth of all persons and the sacredness of creation. Additionally, they resonate with the Church's mission initiative to abolish poverty and end suffering. The SDGs reflect the Church's commitment to the pursuit of justice and peace on and for earth. Understanding the principles of SDGs can guide Community of Christ disciples to participate in the journey toward a just and peaceful world. Recognizing the interconnectedness of humanity and the planet in pursuit of shared well-being. This information introduced in this lesson about poverty and racism and climate change is just the beginning. There is so much more to learn and understand. Ultimately, the call to each disciple is to take what is learned and allow it to transform how you live and how you interact with others on earth. As stated already, supporting other organizations that have similar goals is an excellent way to begin. Consider Matthew 25, verse 40 and 45. Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." We could probably take a pause here because we're now ready to begin on lesson 5. Does anyone have any comments that they would like to share with reference to this whole arena of prejudice and racism?
Yeah, we do have a question from Gwendolyn Hawks Blue. What are some of the specifics of the Paris Agreement that individuals or congregations could support?
I don't have that right before me, but it had to do with the fact that every nation has agreed to reduce its carbon footprint, for one thing, which is the major challenge, and then recognize the needs of various populations that are vulnerable and seek to support them in ways that can bring about employment and access to resources. And it's a matter of each country that signed on to the agreement would agree to those basic principles. And by the way, it's noted that in another regime in our country, we were removed from that climate accord. And so we are now very much a part of it now. And so it calls on us, not only as nations, but it calls upon individuals to seek out ways that they can recognize the vulnerabilities and the possibilities. And this next lesson is entitled "The Imperative to Act," and it calls upon us to engage in several ways that we can recognize our responsibilities as stewards.
Well, I think that one of the main points of this last chapter is that it's not just about the land and the food and those things. It's about poverty. It's a systematic problems that are taking place, and we in developed nations are somewhat responsible for some of those structures that we benefit from, that have put people into these less than human experiences. Is that right?
That is true. And I can't emphasize enough that education is the foundation. Becoming educated into the problems and the possibilities is our responsibility as stewards. And I'm hoping that in our school systems that we are teaching our young people the possibilities of critical thinking and the possibilities of thinking about how we might arrive at solutions. Well, unless there's something else, let's charge on.
We did have one comment to vote for candidates that support the Paris
Okay.
Accords. So go ahead.
Okay. Lesson 5 is entitled The Imperative to Act. So in this exploration, we'll express some simple and impactful solutions to climate issues. Many scientists, government officials, and citizens of the world believe Earth is in a dangerous environmental crisis, largely due to greenhouse gases polluting the atmosphere. The problem is intensified by greed and wasteful lifestyles. Although many agree there's a problem, most have been content to discuss it without making meaningful and lasting corrections. From our scriptures, again, we read from section 163, let the educational and community development endeavors of the church equip people of all ages to carry the ethics of Christ's peace into all arenas of life. Prepare new generations of disciples to bring fresh vision to bear on the perplexing problems of poverty, disease, war, and environmental deterioration. Their contributions will be multiplied if their hearts are focused on God's will for creation. Understanding and acceptance of ongoing climate change has grown over the past several years. There always will be debate about specific facts and the best way to respond, but it is encouraging that the topic no longer is the focus of a specific group, such as one nation, one political party, or one scientific school of thought. The challenge is in breaking down dividing walls and finding solutions as citizens of one Earth. Unfortunately, carbon emissions from fossil fuel combustion and land use have a 2-century head start on solutions. The buildup of greenhouse gases we experience today occurred in the absence of human understanding. Our ancestors were innocent of the damage that they were causing. That can tempt us to believe that global warming is something that is happening to us, that we are victims of a fate that was determined by activity that came before us. If we were to change this preposition and consider that global warming is happening for us, an atmospheric transformation that inspires us to change and reimagine everything we make and do, we begin to live in a different world. Climate justice is not about finding people or organizations to blame. Climate justice is an opportunity to see global warming not as an inevitability, but as an invitation to build, innovate, and effect change. It becomes a pathway that inspires creativity, compassion, and genius. Seeking climate justice needs to become our collective agenda. And I've suggested on occasion that stewardship is more than just counting our money and giving offerings to church. Our stewardship includes the collecting of those ideas and those innovations that make a difference in our world. Now is the time to take a stand to protect Earth and begin the process of innovation. Every day offers opportunities to help the environment. We have unique ways as individuals to make a difference. Humans have the ability to alter our natural environment. By making simple changes to things we do every day, we can protect the environment now and make a real difference for the future. What's more, a commitment to sustainability may inspire others to take action as well. Be a good example. A place to begin is repenting of the ways we have caused destruction to our planet. Each person generates some level of ecological damage. Each person is invited to learn and acknowledge what contribution, small or large, you might be making to the destruction of creation or biological diversity and the degradation of Earth by causing changes to its climate. We must change not only our lifestyle, but our whole belief system. Rather than succumbing to an overwhelming fear or burden, we simply must focus on the task and seek to live more humbly, with great contentment and less anxiety in realistic stewardship. How we treat the planet, including consumer choices and daily habits, is interwoven with becoming people who are mindful of each other's needs and demonstrating that through wise decisions and daily habits, we are reminded of our interconnectedness by scriptures in Jeremiah and in the Doctrine and Covenants. For in their welfare resides your welfare. A spirituality that forgets the power of divinity is not acceptable. That is how we end up worshiping earthly powers or ourselves usurping the place of God, even to the point of claiming an unlimited right to trample creation. The best way to restore humans to their rightful place, ending their claim to absolute dominion over Earth, is to speak once more of the sacredness of creation. As everything is connected, concerns for Earth's environment includes a genuine love and involve the other travelers in this journey called life. That includes an unwavering commitment to resolving the problems in society. It's a matter of justice. Everything is related, and humans are united as children of God. We are on an exciting pilgrimage, woven together by an infinite love for all of creation that unites us in affection with Brother Sun, Sister Moon, Brother River, and Mother Earth. We have only one heart. We cannot consider ourselves to be fully loving if we disregard any aspect of reality. Peace, justice, and the preservation of creation are three infinitely interconnected themes that cannot be separated and treated individually. It is a matter of wholeness, which is the definition of spirituality. In response to World Conference Resolution 1325, Climate Emergency, adopted April 25th, 2023, Community of Christ declared a climate emergency, joining with 2,329 jurisdictions in 40 countries that had made climate emergency declarations as of May 5th, 2023. This declaration is only the first step. What is important is what members and friends of the church will do in response to the climate emergency. This is represented by a phenomenon known as knowing-doing gap, which identifies how people will do, not act on facts they know. Marshall Goldsmith, founder of Stakeholder Center Coaching, said it like this: there is no evidence that the world is a better place because of what we know. The world is a better place because of what we do. Remember, finding solutions to the crisis of climate change is more than making lists of ideas. Those potential solutions must be acted on. Choices and decisions must be made with potential for change. They must result in positive habits that become a way of life, a whole stewardship. Some decisions are simple: plant a tree or start recycling. The bottom line is, it is in our hands. I would like to suggest that In the appendix of this particular lesson, there are over 100 ideas of what we can do. It is in our best interest to seek a healthy lifestyle. And I would suggest also that if you are looking for a book that encompasses all of the positive solutions and possibilities, take a look at the book entitled Drawdown by Paul Hawkins. And so I'd like to end this particular session with the reading of the first verse of hymn number 283 in our hymnal. When in awe of God's creation, we view earth from outer space, this mysterious floating marble, strewn with clouds and bathed in grace, how can we not pause and wonder, seeing earth as one and whole, then confessing our divisions, make earth's healing our prime goal? So, that's my story. David, do we have opportunity now to have more discussion, or are
Absolutely, yes.
we ended?
So today I went to the canteen at Reunion, and the last few snacks have been kind of sugary, bad snacks. So this time I got a watermelon in its natural packaging, organic and sustainable. So that's our snack for the canteen at Reunion today. I'm thinking about how people might present this at Reunion and other things that they might add to it or enhance the experience. I know for me, especially in a class that has a lot of facts and statements, it's also good to get some storytelling in. And those of you who know me, every time I do a adult class at Reunion, I usually add a supplemental viewing of a Disney movie connected to it. And the thing that keeps going through my mind in this one is the movie WALL-E. And those of you who might know that movie is basically the story of the planet that has been overutilized and humanity has left it for some better place, and there is no better place, and the eventual returning back to Earth in order to save a plant. And I think some of our storytelling in some of this, I think, is also helpful as we do this class at Reunion.
Well, I might suggest that to simply read these lessons in a reunion setting like I have done is, for me, not acceptable.
Right.
And it should be noted that in each section of each lesson, there's a series of questions that can be pursued. And for me, the real advantage and the real progress in making sense of all this is in those discussions. And I regret that in this particular format, we did not have the opportunity to sit around in a circle or in small groups and actually pursue some of these questions, because the real advantage is in the discussion as far as I'm concerned. And that's why,
Absolutely.
it would have been nice to have heard more from the folks who are sitting there listening to me.
Right. And we recognize that around that group are going to be people with a number of different opinions, and some who might actually be a little bit disturbed by the direction that the class might be going. And so your ability to feel out the group that shows up and have good discussion will really help with that kind of dialogue.
Well, and part of the advantage would be in disagreement, because
Yes.
as we call each other to task in terms of what we're thinking, I think it helps to appreciate each other more, but it also leads us into uh, some pretty formidable solutions at that point.
Right.
Rick,
Right.
Rick, who was the author of the Drawdown book?
Oh, Paul Hawkins.
Thank you.
Let me get
Yeah, I would also encourage everyone who has access to the materials also to look in that appendix. That appendix is really full of a lot of great organizations, and that would be a discussion almost a day's worth of class right there.
This is just a wonderful text that you have written for us, Rick. Thank you so much for doing it. So the whole thing is just great. There's a wonderful story. You're talking about stories. There's a wonderful story in the email that I got from Outreach International today about how the people in Bolivia are solving their problems. You know how Outreach works. They don't feed them. They teach them how to feed themselves.
Right.
And there's just a delightful story about how they're building greenhouses and growing their own food when they haven't been able to do that before with the help of Outreach International. Great story.
Good. And I know we are talking a lot of American-centric organizations too. I would encourage those in other countries to also explore what options there are in your area and lift those up.
Well, I've been interested too. Sherry Kirkpatrick and her travels to Zambia in particular, that in some of the schools they have tire gardens that not only help eliminate waste in the tires, but it provides opportunity to grow those gardens. And I've also had opportunity to speak to the Peace Colloquy from Latin America, and also the winter reunion in South Texas. And there were some really good ideas in terms of collective gardens and community gardens and so forth that came out of that. So there are some really good possibilities worldwide.
Susan Trimble has said also the Climate Change Colloquy series has many archive sessions. Susan, if you know where that can be accessed, just put that in the chats there too, and we'll have that for other people to share with.
And by the way, I see Rod Downing on the screen there, and what's happening in the northwest part of the United States and Southwest Canada. Those discussions on Sunday afternoon are really important and should be addressed by all of us.
We saw a wonderful film just this last Sunday called Climate Restorers, which was great. On that session with the people in the Northwest.
Good. Any other resources that people might find helpful for this class during the reunion?
Did you hear him?
Well,
go ahead, Paul.
If your reunions have access to video and YouTube and so forth, there are some really good resources that are listed in the appendix of this particular lesson. And I'm thinking of one in particular that's available entitled Kiss the Ground. It's on regenerative farming. And there's a new one out as a successor to that one called Common Ground. And it has to do a lot with carbon storage and water dissipation through plowed ground in the fall. So those would be two good resources if you have access to video.
Somebody had their hand up. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
This may be more controversial than I want it to be, but do mission centers and congregations think about use of buildings where we have congregations very small in number, clustered together, how that is impacting at least our area as far as the environment is concerned?
Well, hi, Gwendolyn. Good to see you. I'm in the process, I think I mentioned last time, of trying to create a resolution for World Conference. And one of the things I'm suggesting is to use our reunion grounds and our facilities as examples of how we can treat the environment and even have colloquies or some kind of gatherings. And so along with that, these gatherings that you're suggesting are facilities and clusters of doing inventories of our energy and make sure that we can, in many cases, obviously, we're not going to be able to afford some of these things, but at least take a look at how we might mitigate some of the environmental problems of our facilities. Does that answer the question? Is that what you're
Yeah,
looking?
that is part of what I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good question, Gwen. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you're facilitating these classes, depending on where you're at, an interesting real life example or story could be to check legislation that's going on in your state. Now, I'm in California, so there's just boatloads of climate resolutions, but or legislation, but multiple states have tried to outlaw plastic bags, and it's interesting to see who fights that, who pushes that off. California is trying to go back to reusable bottles instead of throwaway, and it's interesting to see who is trying to fight that. There's all kinds of stuff that, Michigan has a lot of stuff going on. All the West Coast states usually do. Arizona is implementing heat issues. And then, Florida has legislation outlawing, mandating employees to have heat breaks during the day. So there's all kinds of things going on, and sometimes it's surprising. People don't realize that there are people working for some of these things and who's fighting it. So.
Well, I know in reference to the plastic bags, some years ago, the city of Seattle was trying to outlaw plastic bags, and it was brought to the vote of the people, and it was the plastic industry that brought that down, that defeated it. I was interested. I don't know if you saw on TV yesterday, I think Good Morning America, the whole idea of the one-use plastic bags that corporations like Walmart and Target are collecting with the idea that they could be recycled, and they're ending up 9,000 miles away in Southeast Asia in their landfills. So
Yes. CBS Sunday Morning did a program of that just last weekend
okay.
that you can look up on YouTube. It's the recycling, the false advertising on what we do as recycling in the United States, which is just made me mad.
Well, our legislators could do something about that, but also we need to keep encouraging companies to things that can be recycled, to do everything they can to recycle what can be recycled.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the important part of this class too. It can be really easy to be overwhelmed by this worldwide issue that is too big for me to do anything about. But if we can bring it back around to local action, what's going on in our community, what can we do within our small frame of connection, and what can we personally do? What can I cut back on? What can I encourage my family as a spiritual practice to do without? In order for us to at least bring this issue to a place where we can all participate in it and recognize it being an important part of our stewardship of Earth.
Well, and along with that, it's interesting that way back in the creation of our country, back in the 1700s, it was Edward Everett Hale that said, "I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but as one, I will not refuse to do the something I can do, or one thing I can do."
And I think that's a great place for us to end tonight, Rick. Thank you so much, Rick, for being with us these past 4 sessions. Those of you who did not see the entire series, we will have it up on YouTube. on the Community of Christ Seminary page. And for those of you who are watching this, the link is below in the video. And we have a number of other upcoming CIMM sessions, and we encourage you to check out the calendar online. And thank you for joining us.